cut the fun music off. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Carlos. I'm from the Digicom training team. We have a few Digicom members from the training team here alongside the chat, including Eric, Amelia, and Debbie. So welcome to them too. So I just want to welcome everyone and thank everyone for taking the time to just be with us and go over the upcoming CMS upgrade. As you've received email communications, we're going to be upgrading to a newer version of the CMS. And as we will explain along the way, it will change the way CMS authors are going to be interacting with the new user interface. And this and the new training sessions will be showing you and demoing really the new interface before the official launch around the end of July. And we'll discuss specific timelines through email communications in the upcoming weeks. I just want to note that this is going to be a very basic training and really an overview of the new UI interface. All online documentation will be updated for the actual launch, and the CMS training will be available for any and all questions both before and after the launch. We'll be also sending out a follow-up email, which includes an updated, an unedited recording of this session and include just different resources, online resources for the upgrade. We'll also have some time to answer a few questions after each demo, and you're also welcome to ask your questions through the chat, and a member of the Digicom team will answer them through there. And we'll also have, of course, a Q&A at the end of the session as well. So before we begin, does anyone have any questions? Nope. All right. So the first thing before we really go into the actual overview is really a question of why are we upgrading? And the first thing we're going to go through is security. We really want to ensure that the CMS is up to date on security updates and security features provided by the vendor. And we want to ensure that CMS users are using CMS that has these most up-to-date features when it comes to security. The second thing is going to be cloud migration. As we move away from physical data centers and towards the cloud, we're really required to update to a newer version of the CMS to allow for successful migration. And we want to make sure that the migration happens effectively and it happens both successfully. And really the last thing is, one of the most important things is we really want to leverage CMS feature updates. We want to leverage the latest CMS feature updates as they roll out from the vendor, especially as CMS feature updates come out in the future. We want to make sure that the CMS is future-proof, especially as the classic UI interface. Really, we can't really support these newer features. So what's really new about the CMS? And the biggest thing you'll notice once we start going through the demo and the slides is you're going to notice a really different page authoring experience. What I do want to emphasize is that while the way you interact with the CMS has, for the most part, significantly changed, the CMS is still the same as you've used it. The functionality is the same. The things you can do on it are the same. Just the way you navigate it and where really the different things are going to be the same. So that goes to my second point, just general navigation. The navigation of the CMS is significantly different, and we'll go through it in the demo. Again, while the navigation is different, what the CMS does is very similar. And I just want to emphasize that we're still on AEM, we're still using the same vendor, just the specific user interface is going to change. One of the other things that's going to change is the terminology. Some terminology is going to change in terms of how you use it, and some conceptual differences, which I'll go a little bit into later. And one of my favorite things is going to be expanded web browser compatibility. So we no longer have to use the CMS only on Firefox. The CMS can now be used on Firefox, Safari, Chrome, and additionally touch-enabled devices. So you can use it on your iPad as well. This is where the quote-unquote touch UI comes in, where now you can use it on touch-enabled devices, and the navigation is now adapted for these devices. So very exciting. But yes, these are going to be really these new concepts. So really our approach today for this upgrade overview is going to be refamiliarizing yourself with what you already know. So we're going to be navigating the CMS again. We're going to be going through some page level actions, using components, going through the assets and how to navigate through the DAM, which is also now significantly different. We'll be going through some demos, and of course, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So a lot of the same things that you know how to use, we'll just refamiliarize yourself and expose you to this new user interface before it actually comes out. We'll be having a little word swap box at those either somewhere on the screen where I'll point out different terminology that appears specifically on how to use the CMS, but it'll appear. And with that, before I begin, does anyone have any questions? It's going to be a lot, but. All right. So let's begin. So first thing we're going to really go over is navigating the Touch UI. So the Touch UI is significantly different on what it looks like and how you're going to navigate it. So the first thing you'll see when you open the new user interface is going to be this screen. So you're going to see sites and you're going to see assets. And there's now a word swap here. It no longer says websites, it says sites. So you'll be clicking on sites, and once you click on sites, you'll be introduced to one of three views. A really significant thing from the classic user interface to this new touch user interface is that you now have the option to leverage between three different views. The default view is going to be the column view. So that'll show the way a page is structured. It'll show what are the child pages, parent pages, similar to the classic UI, but with a little bit of differences. The card view, I would say, is more usable for touch-enabled devices. So let's say you're on your iPad or a mobile device and just the icons are bigger, you hover over things. It's more for touch-enabled devices. And the list view is going to be super useful, specifically for people who are used to the classic editor and the classic UI in terms of the amount of information it offers. So you can see the status of publication, who's published it, when it was published, the names, you can sort the names through list view. So it's very useful and more informative. But when you first use the Touch UI, the default will be the column view. And I'll go over how to switch between views, but the default will be the column view. And the next thing you'll notice on the Touch UI that'll be really important is going to be the action bar. So the action bar is going to appear once you select a page, and it's pretty dynamic. So if you select more than one page, you'll get a slightly different options for the action bar. But generally speaking, there's going to be a few options. And here's another word swap. So now there is no more activate and deactivate. There is now publish and unpublish. So instead of saying we're going to be activating your page, you'll be saying we're going to publish a page. And you can see here where it says quick publish, that's an example of publish. You'll be able to see more options of publishing and unpublishing in the page properties or in the page information. Another thing that you may notice is that you can't click to create a new page. You don't click new anymore. You now click create, which again, same functionalities, just differences in how just the naming and where it's placed. You'll have an edit button to reach the editing part of the page. You'll be able to view the page properties. You can lock the page, copy a page, move a page, quick publish, manage publications, and of course, delete. So again, things you can do in the CMS that are now different in the way of how it's navigated. And getting to the action bar, as I mentioned, is going to be just selecting the page and this action bar will appear. And it'll change depending on how many pages are selected. So now we get to go to the demo. So here is the starting page of the new Touch UI touch interface, and we see sites and we see assets. So the first thing you're going to do is click on sites. And what you'll notice is that there's really not much here. And what you'll have to do is click on NYU and then click again on NYU, similar to the classic UI and how you navigate it. And you'll see all the pages that you need to see. And again, in some cases, depending on how you link through this, you may be just directed to a specific page, and it'll slowly start to autofill. If you want to return to the sites and assets navigation, you can always click on up here where it says Adobe Experience Manager, and it'll return you to the sites and assets navigation. And again, you click it and it goes away. So it's very simple. There's also a close button on the top right. You can go back. Next, what we're going to go through is really the navigation. So the navigation views, if you click on the top right here, you can see 3 different navigation views. The 3 I mentioned, we have column view, which is the default. We have card view, which is a bit overwhelming because they're really big, but it's more meant for touch-enabled interfaces. So on an iPad, on mobile devices. And then you have your list view, which, as I mentioned, has a lot more information. So you can see the title, the name of the URL, when it was last modified, the status of its publication. When it's not published, it'll say not published. The templates used. If you need to find it a little more quicker, you can sort to see. You can either sort by when it was last modified, if it's published. There's a little more functionality on how it's used. One of the tricks that may be useful, especially for people moving from the classic user interface to this touch-enabled interface, is if you click on the top left here and you click on content tree, it'll open this very nice content tree, and now you have something very similar to the classic UI. So you can view each page and click on it, and it'll take you to different parts of your content. I do want to emphasize that this view is not default like it is in the classic UI. So if you do want to set this up like this, you'll have to change your navigation view to list view and then open the content tree. The good thing though about Touch UI is this new touch interface is that if you change to, let's say you like using list view. So if you leave, let's say you exit out and you come back to the CMS, you'll still stay on list view. It'll save that configuration, and you'll be able to always see list view until you change it again to card view or column view. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to select a page. So let me go to column view since it's the default. And let's click on a page. Let's select a page. So to select a page, you'll hover over this icon and see this check mark. And then you will see an action bar. So the action bar, for in this case, we don't have really many properties in it. Let me remove this content tree. But if you go, let's say, to a page that you do have a little more access to. So let's see if I can quickly go to a page. Oh, here it is. So if I click on a page that I have approver access to, you can see the action bar has way more options. So you see create, you see edit, properties, lock, copy, move, quick publish, etc. You can see this action bar in all different views. Very similarly, so when I go to, let's say, list view, and I hover over a page and click on the check mark, you will see the action bar appear. Same thing with card view. I might lose where okay, good. There's only one page here. So if you hover over a page and click the check mark again, you'll see the action bar appear. So really, the check mark's going to be really important throughout this new upgrade because it's used to select a page. It's used to say that you're done saving a page. You'll see it all around. So it's going to be kind of your go-to to be able to navigate it. So before I move forward, does anyone have any questions regarding just like general navigation, the action bar, maybe page selecting? Okay. So the next thing we're going to go over is going to be page level action. So really just a little go over page selecting and how it works a little more, how to create a new page, how to edit a new page and open a new page, and really going over page properties. So I'll go into a little bit of page selection. We went over it, but you'll be selecting a page again by clicking on the check mark in each different view. It's going to be very useful for getting the action bar. Oh, sorry. And one of the things that's going to be really important when it comes to page selection is now, unlike the classic UI where you double click a page to open it and to edit it, you cannot do that anymore in this touch enabled interface. You must select the page and click the edit button in the action bar. If you try to double click on a page, it'll just open a child page. And if it is already the last child page in a specific branch, so the last page in your content, it won't do anything. It'll just stay there. So you want to make sure that you highlight the page, click on the check mark, and then click on edit. And we'll go over it in the demo, and you'll see. The page toolbar is going to be super useful when it comes to working with page properties. You'll have the side panel. You'll see the page info up top, different modes, specifically edit and time warp, page previewing. So just being able to see the page as a preview, and annotations. So again, very similar to your current classic UI, just things have moved around and we're just a matter of showing you where it is. Let's go into the demo. All right, so we're back here. And what we're going to do first is we are going to select a page. So let's say you're going about and selecting a page and you maybe are used to the classic UI where you're just double clicking. So if I double click, it just keeps highlighting everything. Nothing will actually happen. So what you'll have to do in this case, and again, if you double click here, or if you double click here, it'll just bring you to the next branch. So what you want to really do is highlight it and click edit. And now we are on the page editor. So it's very important. I know it took me a while to get used to it, but once you get used to it, just highlighting, clicking edit, same with any other view, it'll just become secondhand nature. Again. So the next thing what we're going to do here is we want to create a new page. So creating a new page is going to be found on the top right. I mentioned the create button is now replaces the new button. You're going to click create and click page. And here you're given the option for page templates. Page templates are going to be the content template and content template with sidebar. Very similarly to the classic UI, you'll have appropriate templates for different pages throughout the CMS. So if you're used to templates that are not listed here, they'll appear as well in the new Touch UI editor. So we'll click on content template. Again, the little check mark here, very important. You'll click next, and you'll see similarly title, name, tags, page title, navigation title. Most important is going to be title. So if we click test page, and just quickly click create, we got a pop-up. It'll say success. Your page has been created. You can either click done to bring you back to the original navigation, or you can click open to actually open the page. So we'll click open. And we have created our first page in the Touch UI. So now, once we see the page, we'll notice the top page toolbar. So you have the side panel, and we'll go over a little bit what the side panel is, especially with components and assets, but this is essentially where you'll find your components and where you'll find your assets. You'll have page information. This is especially useful if you need to find the page properties, if you need to publish a page from within the page or unpublish a page, view it as published, and if you want to go back to the previous navigation view, the site admin view, you will click view and admin to return back to the page. In this version, you'll see the edit and time warp function. So again, we're already in edit mode. Time warp will be able to similarly in the classic UI, go to a previous version of the page. And preview mode is going to just show you the page as it would look when it's published. So return back to the edit mode, you'll have to go back to here and click edit. And then annotations is going to be where annotations happen. Depending on how your team uses annotations, annotations is a little bit different in the touch interface because now you'll have an annotation mode where you'll be able to add annotations, but the annotations won't be readily available. So you won't see the little sticky note on the page anymore. You'll have to see that there are annotations on the top right, and you'll see a number with the number of annotations. So if there's 3 annotations, you'll see the number 3 here. So a little bit different if in the case if you do use annotations. Before we move on, does anyone have any questions? I know this is a lot, but again, we're here to help and answer any questions you might have. No? Okay. Wonderful. So we will move on. So using components. So using components is going to be really important when it comes to discussing the retirement of the sidekick, finding different where the components are. I mentioned very briefly where you could find them in the sidebar, different component actions. So we'll go over a few components that we'll go through and how to really edit the components. So unfortunately, the sidekick that you either hate or love, depending on how you use it, has been retired. So no more sidekick, no more floating sidekick on the side, but it's okay. The sidekick properties are still available, and they, as you've seen, been moved to different parts of the navigation. So it won't show up floating anymore. We've seen where the page properties are, where you can publish a page from within the page. We'll go over where you can find components that used to be available in the sidekick. But again, sidekick is no longer part of the new interface. To find and add components, there's 2 ways to add a component. So one way is to click on the side panel and choose the components icon, which is going to be the second component on this list here. And you'll see all the components available that you can drag into the page. And the second way to do it is to click on a plus icon that will appear once you highlight the drag component here portion. You can click on the plus icon, and you'll see a listing appear of all the available components for that specific part of the page. Component actions are going to be found by highlighting a specific component. So in this case, we highlighted the rich text editor, and you will be clicking on this configure button to actually edit the page, but there are different options that you can use. And the different options are going to be configure, copy, cut, delete, add above, and group. This general toolbar may change depending on what is used and where really which component you'll use, but these are the specific ones that you'll notice the most. Specifically, the configure button is going to be the one that you use the most. Once you click, let's say, the configure button, for example, in the rich text editor, you'll get the rich text editor window, which now looks a little different here. For the rich text editor specifically, you'll need to first click anywhere in the blank field and the actual formatting options for the rich text editor will appear. So a little different on how you use it, but again, this rich text editor is still there, similar to the classic UI, just how you navigate it is a little different. So let's go over the demo. So I'm going to first open a page. Again, select the page and click edit. And this is just a very page I stole from another part of our content. But you can see here, if I highlight a page, you'll get a line that highlights the components. If you click on it, you can click the configure button. There's the copy, the cut, the delete button, the insert component button, the paste button in case that you are copying a component and then need to paste it somewhere. The paste button is available. The group button, and this button we don't really go into. It's kind of an experience fragment button, but we mostly are going to focus on these buttons. So let's say you want to add a component. So as I mentioned, there's two ways to add a component. One way is going to be just highlighting the drag component here and clicking this plus insert component, and you'll get the listing of all the components that you can use. The other way to add a component is by clicking the sidebar up top, the side panel, and selecting this component icon here, and you'll see all the list of available components. I do want to note that sometimes the drag component here can be more reliable in what components you can add in the specific spot. So sometimes if you try to drag a component and it doesn't let you drag, it's because you cannot have that component there, similar to the classic UI. But again, you'll just drag a component. So let's drag rich text editor, and you'll see a small arrow appear. And we have added rich text editor. And you'll see a very similar icon here similar to the classic UI. Some components will have this placeholder icon, others will have just something blank. So for example, I believe images might have a blank. Yep, so you'll see a blank, no placeholder icon in that case. Don't be alarmed, it just means that the component is there, there's just no placeholder icon. So if we highlight the component and we select configure, the rich text editor is here. Don't be alarmed, it works. You just have to click anywhere, really click in the text field is useful, and you'll see all the formatting options. Similar formatting options that you can use, like you've been able to use in the classic UI. So you have the bold, the italicized, underline, you have find and replace that you can use. This check spelling, so very different. The link, using links, so very similar, just the way it looks is a little different. So we will press done. So this checkbox here is going to be your new done button. So to click done, to finish saving the component, you'll click done. If you click cancel, it won't save the component as much. There's a full screen, the toggle full screen mode. The toggle full screen mode is not very useful for some components. So in this case, it doesn't really make anything bigger, but it can be useful for the editing images. So once you're editing, cropping an image, the toggle component may be useful in that case. So let's untoggle by clicking again, and we will click the checkbox. Done. And now we'll do image. So for image, we will click the configure button. It's a little bit different than what used to be in the classic UI. First thing you'll see is the drop asset here. And there's two ways to add an asset. So one way is having the side panel open. This is a big thing that it took me a second to get used to, but if you try to drop an asset from the side panel. So let's say you have the side panel closed and you select configure. And you try to open the side panel. It does not let you open the side panel. So you have to first keep the side panel open. You can keep the side panel open. You don't have to select the asset. I tend to just to do it, but then you can drop in an asset. So you can drop in any asset here, and then now you can drop it in. Another way to do it is by clicking this image icon. A little bit harder, but if you know exactly where to look, it'll open this overall pathfinder. So if you click NYU, and in our case, this approver example user has access to the diversity page. So again, click images, and it'll load all the images. Again, this is more useful if you know exactly where to look and you know what your asset is named. Again, if you click one and then hover over it, select the check mark, click select, and now you have the image there. Clear will clear it out, and pick will let you pick another, replace the image. It's very similarly, you can add a caption, insert a link. Clicking on the Pathfinder here, the selection dialog will let you use this tool. Specifically, you must use this tool if you are linking to a page within the CMS. So just a reminder to do that. So if you, again, select a page, hover over it, check mark, select, you have the page. So very similar to what the classic UI is. Another thing you will have to take note is that the accessibility, specifically the alternative text, is in a separate tab. And you'll see it say image alternative text. In some components, it says alt text, but it's all just all alternative text. You'll have to fill this out before publishing an image. So text will say, in this case, we will click done. And we have published an image. So the image component is interesting because it has this additional icon, this pencil icon. It's one of the few components that has this icon, and it's essentially what I mentioned, going to be useful if you want to edit the image directly in. So if you click full screen mode is then where you'll be able to edit the image. And I'll go over editing once we go over the DAM and the assets later, but essentially this is one way you'll need to edit the image. So again, we'll do it one more time. We'll do it with basic promo, I mean. So this time we'll add it through here. So you'll highlight it, click the plus button, and then the basic promo. You highlight it, there's no placeholder icon in this case again. So you select configure. And very similarly, you have your drop asset here. You can drop an asset. You'll need to have a title. Anything asterisk is required. You'll need to have something to link to, and specifically if you're using a CMS page, you'll need to use this feature to actually link to the CMS. And very similarly, you can add text, add a style, same thing, light or bold. And then in the accessibility tab, you'll need to add your alternative text. Again, this naming changes a little depending on the component, but it's still alternative text. Wonderful. So does anyone have any questions before I move on? Feel free to just unmute and ask. I know it's a lot of to learn, but definitely we're here to answer any questions that you guys may have.
So are the, Carlos, the content tree, is that going to be the same from the current CMS to the new CMS?
Yes, so for the most part, the content tree in the navigation is going to be similar, just the way you are navigating it is going to be different. So the user interface is going to be different. You can see the content tree here. That's for the most part similar, but as I mentioned, this is not an option that'll appear right away. So you'll need to navigate. If you want to view the content tree, you'll need to navigate and click content tree here. Column view is very useful, a version of the content tree, but really this is the actual content tree that you can use.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh. All right, so we'll move on. So now we go to the assets and the DAM. So the assets and the DAM, again, very similar to the current classic UI, similar to what we can do, just different in how it looks and how we navigate it. So we'll be discussing how to navigate the DAM, sorry about that, navigate the DAM, DAM actions, using assets, and tips on using the DAM. So navigating the DAM, when we start from the original navigation, we'll click on assets and we'll click on files. So just two-step process, assets and files. Very similar to the sites navigation, you'll have three views. You'll have column view, you'll have card view, and you'll have list view. Card view is the default in this case, specifically because it may be a little easier to view your images in card view, but you can always toggle between list view and column view, similarly in how you do it in the sites navigation on the top right. Again, card view is also useful on touch-enabled devices for just bigger icons, but list view may have more information on when an asset was added or when an asset was published or changed or who it was added by. Very similar to the site navigation. So to create an to add a DAM, you'll have to use the create button on the top right. Very similar to the site navigation, you'll click create and you'll click files. You also have the option to create a folder, but you can also select files. A new feature in the CMS upgrade is that you can now drag assets directly into the browser, which is very easy now. However, I will caution that when it comes to dragging into an asset into the browser, you cannot the asset will stay named what you had it named as a system dialog. So if you had it named a very long series of characters in your computer and you just drag it in, you can rename it later, but if you manually use this create button and add files, you'll get a pop-up to rename it before. And you'll see that an example of that in the demo. But just as a word of caution, dragging it in will just throw it in there as is. Whereas if you manually add it, you're given the option to rename. Similarly, you have the action bar. So the action bar appears where you select the file. So if you select the file, you have the option to download, you have properties, managing its tags, copy, quick publish, manage publication. A lot of similar options to the classic UI, just where it is a little bit different. And editing is going to be really useful. Editing is useful on how you can crop an image, specifically how we crop on image in our specific ratios. You can flip an image, rotate an image. I went over a little bit of editing, how you can get to editing from the components, but using assets is you can find using an asset in the sidebar by clicking the side panel here. And then once you click the side panel, you will see the assets pop up. Again, you'll be able to drag in your assets into the component. So now it's time for a demo. Sorry about that, everyone. My internet went away for a second, but now let's do the demo. So again, very similarly, you're in the main navigation page and you will go to Assets and then Files. And you'll be presented with card view. So again, very similar to the site's navigation, you can toggle between views. I'll stay in card view just because it's easier to view images. So in our case, we'll click NYU and then diversity because that is what this user is able to edit. And then we will click images and you'll see all the assets here. If you want to go back, one thing I forgot to mention is that if you do want to go back in the site's navigation and the DAM assets, you can always click this title here and go back to the previous. So let's go into images. And let's say we want to add an image. We would click create, file. It'll open your system dialog, which I don't know if you can see, but it's okay. And when I'm going to add an image of Taylor's picture from commencement. So again, we are going to add the image and it'll give us the option to rename, very similar to the classic UI. So upload. So we will name this, let's say NYU commencement. Wonderful. So you'll see it say processing. Once it's processed, you'll see the image that you added. The other way, as I mentioned, is you can drag and drop. So if I just drag an image, you'll see the view dim a little or turn slightly gray. You'll see the drag and drop to upload, and then you'll just drop it in. As I warned and mentioned, if you do this, it'll just automatically leave it as is. So that was named Taylor NYU 004. So if you want to change it, you'll have to click this little ellipsis here and click edit. Or I believe it's actually in properties, not edit. Sorry about that. So that's how you add an asset. If we want to go to the edit function, you can either press this ellipses here and click edit, or you can select the asset, go to the action bar on top and click edit. We're in the edit feature. So again, most of the edit options are going to be on this side. On the right side, we'll just have undo and redos and your done button and your cancel button. So specifically to add a crop, you'll have to add, let's say you want to add a 2-3 crop specifically for some components. Some components will automatically crop images for you. But in case that you don't want to have, let's say the component crops an image and you don't like where it's cropped, you can always open the image in the editor and crop the image there. I do want to note that we recommend you perform these crops sparingly and when you first upload an asset, specifically because if you edit this image and it is referenced in other places, it will change in all references of the asset. So if you're going to edit an image, try to do it right when you add the image in the beginning, specifically if you're going to crop or flip or do anything with the image. So we did a 2-3 crop. You can always remove it. You can do freehand crop as well. If you want to rotate the image, you can rotate clockwise or counterclockwise, and you can always flip it horizontally or vertically as well. This option here of adding a circular map, I wouldn't recommend using too often. It's really just to add a type of map to it, to create it to edit it into a circle. I wouldn't recommend using this feature too often. I would stick with just the cropping, the freehand crops and the ratio crops. If you want to undo, you can always undo or redo. Pretty simple, but the option will be there. And to save images, you'll click the check mark, which is if you highlight over it, it's finished. It's always either done or finished, but it'll always be a check mark. Click check mark. Let's hope it actually goes through. Wonderful. So there's my cropped image right here. Images that you add will always appear in the beginning of the card view specifically. And if you'll want to publish the image, you can always select and click quick publish. Selected items are queued up for activation. That just means that they're going to be published shortly. So does anyone have any questions before I move on from this part of the asset?
So is quick publish the same as activate image in the current CMS?
Yep, same thing. Just the naming has changed to publish instead of activate. Any other questions? Nope. Wonderful. So let me.
Don't forget, I'll just add, don't forget that if you edit an asset, like an image, if you crop it, if you rotate it, that it will show up everywhere on pages. That's really important.
Mhm.
It's a little bit easier to edit an asset now and find that, but it's usually you want to edit it on your pages when you use it. You don't want to edit it originally because it'll update every use of that. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so make sure you edit it try to edit it. Oh, so tips on using the dam. These are just general tips. Try to leverage different views to help you find assets. Card view can be a little overwhelming, but it can be useful if you need to see your images at first glance. List view is very useful if you need to see more information about your assets, and then column view is useful if you need to just see the general structure of where your asset is and you need to just jump right through it. Again, as Eric mentioned, editing original assets will change all instances. So that's really important to keep in mind. And just to make assets, just to make it easier to find assets, always create subfolders and pre-plan and try to use thoughtful names. Don't just say image 0543, as that can be confusing for you or someone else in the future trying to find an image. And always add tags. Tags are super, super useful and especially useful for finding images quickly. So thank you everyone for viewing this CMS overview. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I know there were a few questions in the chat, which I think Eric's been answering. Awesome.
I have a question about the editing the images. So in the classic, you'd add a component and you could crop the image there so it would fit, say, in a small promo.
Sorry,
If you can't do that, you can't do that in the new update. That would actually change it everywhere.
sorry, I missed the first part of the question. I think it broke up.
I'm sorry. I was asking about the editing the images in the current CMS. You can add a image to say a basic promo, and you would crop it a little bit so that it looks better in the smaller spaces. If you do that in the new version, it's going to change the image everywhere.
So I can clarify that. So sorry if that wasn't clear. When you edit an image in a component, it's just for that instance right there on that page. If you edit the asset in the DAM, then that edits the image everywhere it's used in the site. In the
Okay,
CMS.
perfect. Thank you.
Sorry for confusing that. There's a question from Dawn that I think is good that everybody will probably want to hear of when is this going to launch. So we are finalizing details. So we'll send an email in probably the next week or two latest with all the exact details that you all want to know. And we'll make sure that that's also published on our web pages. But we're looking like launch will be around the last week of July. So if you're going on vacation, we'll handle all of the work. You'll just want to know when you come back, or if you're here, you'll be able to dive right in. I can give you a preview is that there won't be downtime, but there will be a period of time where if you make a change to the current page, to a current page in the current version, you may have to recreate it once we go live. But we're going to try to minimize that, but there will be no downtime except for a brief moment, and we'll do that after hours, so it won't be during the middle of the business day. So I can at least share that for now. And yes, Nancy, yes, we'll email exactly when. And just to be clear, you are welcome to make changes. We want to make sure that everybody has the ability to communicate through your web pages at any time. So if say there's a Monday, that's the moment when we start the final upgrade and you make a change. If you make a change on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, you just might have to recreate it in the upgrade environment when that goes live. But you can always make a change. You don't have to stop. It just might be more convenient if you could hold on those updates for a couple of days, then pause and make them after we launch the upgraded environment. So either way, we won't prevent you from publishing changes that are important to get out there online. One other thing too, I think Carlos mentioned, but just as a reminder, we'll also include in our emails, it'll be important that you bookmark the new CMS authoring URL. We'll do our best to redirect and make sure that you get pushed over, but there will be a new URL to access authoring and to log in there. It won't be dramatically different, but just so you know, that'll be a slightly different URL. And yes, Nancy, whenever we do our usual code bug fixes, code deployment changes, those, even with this upgrade, after we're done launching the upgrade, those will typically be on Fridays at 5. And if you've ever been working Friday at 5, like maybe a few of us, you'll know that it's only down for a brief moment of time, usually between 5 and 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So yeah, those normal kind of maintenance windows when we push changes and updates would be the same going forward long term. And we'll share that URL in email probably that week before we go live. We'll share that URL. We'll give all the detailed instructions of the timeline for launch, and we'll make sure that we send a follow-up email to everybody once we launch, so everything is done. You can go in. We'll make that URL very clear, and that'll be the point when you probably want to bookmark the URL so you have it handy going forward. Good question.
Any other questions?
Eric, this is specific to or Carlos, to the public affairs for the news images. I assume it's going to be the same size requirement that we've had with the existing place.
We'll probably have a separate session for all of you, just because the NYU News section does have some unique components and unique changes. So we'll sit down and have a session to go through all some of those particular changes that are related to all the public affairs officers. We'll reach out to that.
Okay, thanks. Oh, on an unrelated note, and you can hear it in the background, I've been trying to figure out how to shut off the chat, which you've done successfully, Eric, it looks like, in the Gmail. How the heck do you do that? This may be beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, for anybody else who needs to know, there should be a status button, probably like a green icon or something. If you click that, you can change it to mute notifications, and you can set a period of time that it mutes off notifications.
All right, thanks for going above and beyond as usual.
Sure. Yes, Nancy, good question. Can't say it enough. All of your content, all of the components, all the functionality you know and love now in the CMS, or even if you don't love it, it's all staying the same. So all the functionality, all content, all the way it's organized in terms of your files, your tags, all of that is exactly the same. None of that will change in the upgrade. The only thing that's changing is how you get to it and how you interact with all that content. But yes, all the functionality, all of your content, all that's staying the same. All the published URLs and the live site are going to stay exactly the same. None of that's going to change. So this isn't a redesign where we might change functionality and swap components, introduce new features. Right now, this is purely just an upgrade and just a user interface change. So good to clarify. Sure. Great questions.
Great. So if anyone doesn't have any more questions, I will be sending a follow-up email with all information, including an unedited recording of the session, some resources. We set up a webpage with just general overview and a preview of the upgrade and just screenshots and things like that, just to explain a little more in detail some features of the upgrade. And again, we'll be having 2 more training sessions prior to launch, and we'll send out an email once we organize sessions after launch as well. All right, everyone. So thank you so much for joining. I hope you guys have a wonderful morning, rest of your morning.